PRRT was FDA approved in January of 2018, specifically with the agent 177 ludotatate. And this was based on a New England Journal article by Dr. John Strasberg. And it was an international study done primarily in Europe and the US that randomized about 229 patients with midgut neuroendocrine tumors to receive either 177 ludotatate or high-dose octreotide at 60 milligrams monthly. The 177 ludotatate was given in 4 doses, each separated by 2 months. Each dose was 7.4 gigabecquerel or 200 millicuries. And a full treatment course of the ludotatate was 4 doses. And the results favored the experimental arm of 177 ludotatate really across the board. So the progression-free survival was the primary endpoint. At the time the study was published, and even in updated analysis, the median progression-free survival had not been reached, whereas the median progression-free survival for octreotide was 8.4 months. This was a hazard ratio of 0.21, so really a significant reduction in risk of progression for patients who received the 177 ludotatate. Overall survival also favored the ludotatate arm. Median overall survival was also not reached at the time of the publication for either arm, but the difference between the arms was statistically significant, favoring the ludotatate arm. Response rate was also higher in the ludotatate arm of 18% versus 4% for the octreotide arm. I think it's also important to talk about side effects. So the serious or grade 3-4 adverse events for the ludotatate arm were higher than for octreotide, but were pretty well tolerated. The main side effects included myelosuppression, primarily lowering of white blood cells, lymphopenia in particular, and lowering of platelets. In addition, patients had some nausea and vomiting. At the time that trial was conducted, a mixture of many amino acids was used, and that amino acid solution has since been modified to use only arginine and lysine, which tends to be less emetogenic. So much of that nausea and vomiting was actually due to the amino acid solution that was given to protect the kidneys. There is about a 3% risk of a long-term effect on the bone marrow of myelodysplastic syndrome or acute leukemias. And I think that this has long been a concern of many oncologists, and I think we still don't have really long-term data on that. So I think that that's something just to be aware of, to mention to patients. The risk is real, but thought to be relatively low at this point. I also want to mention that a subsequent study, sort of a companion study to that original New England Journal study, came out also indicating a quality of life benefit for patients who received the 177 ludotatate. I think that PRRT and 177 ludotatate specifically have really been a game changer for neuroendocrine tumors. Even though the median PFS was not reached, or at least at the time of that publication, it's estimated to be about 2 years. That is really the longest median PFS of all of our approved systemic treatments. And in addition, there's about an 18% response rate. And many of our systemic agents, SSAs, and the biologics, do not yield tumor shrinkage. And so I think that this really will play an important role for most patients with NETs. When I'm meeting with a patient for the first time and we're starting to talk about selection of therapies, I talk about having, a toolbox, and we have many tools in our toolbox, one of which is SSAs, one of which is PRRT, et cetera. And I tell them that they will likely get all of these therapies in their lifetime. It's really just a matter of selecting when. I think that our colleagues in Europe for a long time had PRRT available and were using this earlier in the disease course. So for example, right after progression on SSA. So they were using it in the second line setting. I think that now that we've had this available in the United States for a couple of years, there is some comfort level with having moved that up some in the order of treatments. So I know I personally am using a little bit earlier, very often right after progression on SSA. I think that I also tell patients that with PRRT, it's probably, at least right now, not the correct first treatment and not the correct last treatment, but somewhere in the middle. I think that when patients get very ill, I think that PRRT can be a really tough treatment to tolerate. And so I don't want to wait too long and miss a window where I can use that treatment for patients.